the day. Cobequid is open 24 hours, and having spent a considerable amount of time out there in my years in the healthcare system, and I'm sure others anxiously await as well. Mr. Speaker, the minister should just admit to Nova Scotians she nor her government have any answers for backups at emergency departments. Instead, they've hired yet another consultant, Dr. John Ross, who I will admit is a very qualified emergency room physician, and I believe starts work today, Mr. Speaker. Probably a good thing given the current situation at Dartmouth General and many other emergency departments around the province. Mr. Speaker, my question to the Minister of Health is how long before Nova Scotians see a return on their investment of this $100,000 consultant?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, every member in this chamber knows that the problem in emergency departments is a problem that has built over at least a 10-year period, Mr. Speaker. It is not a problem that's going to be solved in a matter of days, in a matter of weeks, or even in a matter of months, Mr. Speaker. And while the members here may pursue their questions, which is an important thing to do, Mr. Speaker, but they have expectations that far outstrip what the expectations in the public are, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, people I talk to every day understand that this problem is not going to be solved overnight, that it requires a longer-term view, and it requires an acceptable period of time to get the pieces in place to address this problem, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Hants West on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Chronicle Herald reported today, and I'll table that EHS and paramedics have been advised of certain workload issues as a result of an extended wait times and emergency room closures in certain areas of the province. Mr. Speaker, through you to the Minister of Health, has she increased the budget to reflect the extra costs associated with the need for more ambulances and more paramedics due to this government's inability to solve the problem with ER closures? And if so, Mr. Speaker, how much is that cost going to be on the taxpayer?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And you know, the member could have asked this question during estimates, but I'm not sure why that didn't occur, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, the problem with our emergency departments need to be solved over a longer period of time because it's a system approach. And part of the system is, in fact, emergency health services. And I have to say, we are really privileged to have such an excellent service in this province, and this government will do everything in its power to enhance those services, to fully utilize the scope of practice of the paramedics in our system. They could be doing so much more than even the excellent service that they give us right now, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Bedford Birch Cove.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I took the Minister of Education's suggestion and I checked on the NSCC website, and what I found there sort of raised more questions for me than answers. Question number 5 on question and answers said, would classes be cancelled if there were a strike? All classes, including full-time, part-time and continuing education, will be suspended from the first day of a strike. Students are encouraged wherever possible to work independently on course material and assignments. My question for the Minister, does the Minister think students should teach themselves?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a very serious issue and a very serious question. But I wonder if I might be permitted a brief personal aside.
Sure.
Today is the first day that my mother has had full cable access to Ledge TV. And, you know, I've been telling her she hasn't missed much, you know, that I don't often get questions. And being a proud mother, she is determined that I am, you know, the most critical minister in the whole cabinet. So I just want to thank the opposition parties for making my mother very happy.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And you know, again, I'm not avoiding the answer, but the contingency plan and the strategies developed by senior management and the Board of Governors are their best efforts to provide, you know, some options for students if there is a strike. But I know that they are working as hard as possible, and everyone joins me in trying to encourage the employers and the employees to go back to the negotiating table. A strike is not inevitable.
Okay.
This settlement will only be reached at the negotiating table, and that's why we all need to be encouraging both sides to get back and talk this through. Thank you.
Good job. Good.
The Honourable Member from Bedford Birch Cove on your first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very happy to provide the minister's mother with a chance to see her daughter on television yet again. When I look on that website, Mr. Speaker, one of the things it notes is that the NSTU may or may not decide that strike action is appropriate. Apparently, it's a little out of date. It also says the timelines for potential strike action, in our case, extend until early February 2010. So I'm taking from that students will have this veritable sword of Damocles hanging over their head until next year. My question for the minister, when it says, what impact could a strike have on programs including full-time, part-time, online, apprenticeship and continuing education courses? The answer is every one of NSCC's programs is unique, so the timing and length of a disruption would have different impacts. We are preparing those details now. So in fact, the minister's assertion that this info is online now is not quite right. What there is inadequate.
So your question, member?
This will not alleviate the anxiety of students. I'm asking, what is the minister doing to alleviate the anxiety of students?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe I said earlier, and I will repeat again, that I've been assured by my senior officials that in discussions with senior management at the community college, that the contingency plan will be posted as needed, and when the details are necessary. Obviously, they're not going to put all of them up at the beginning. And, you know, as this process develops and if there is a need for additional information, I have full confidence that the community college will be providing those details. And certainly if the honourable member wishes to have more details, I would encourage her to meet with senior management and get that information directly. Thank you.
The honourable member for Bedford Birch Cove on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I might point out that the minister is in fact as senior as they come, so if she doesn't have the answers, I'm not quite sure who does. There are two more points that on the website that give me pause. Question number 7 says, could a strike keep me from completing my program? And the answer is the exact impact of a strike would depend on what program you're taking, the timing of the strike, and how long it lasted. That must provide a lot of comfort to students. And question 11 says, would tuition fees be reimbursed? Our priority is to minimize the impact that this strike has on student learning and to do everything we can to enable the completion of the semester.
Your question,
there is
member?
no answer here. My question to the minister is, if they lose their terms, will tuition fees be reimbursed?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Yes, I saw that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I cannot and I will not get into that level of discussion. Those are details. They're hypothetical. It's a hypothetical situation. The community college is, as I said earlier, is posting information as it is needed, and I have full confidence that they will provide whatever is necessary to the students. But I urge, no one in this chamber wants a disruption of teaching. And so we're trying to urge both sides to get back to the table. The whole underlying premise of the collective bargaining process is that a solution will be reached at the bargaining table, and we need to respect that. Thank you.
The honourable member for Cumberland South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our population is aging, and accordingly, our need for long-term care facilities is growing by the day. This is a need of facilities that will continue to grow long into the future. Mr. Speaker, the previous government made a commitment to address this very serious issue, and I asked the Minister of Health today, would she agree that these projects that have been announced need to be up and running as soon as possible so we can keep up with this rapidly increasing demand for long-term care beds?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for the question. Mr. Speaker, the various long-term bed projects underway are very important projects, and it is indeed important that, that they be brought in on time and on budget, Mr. Speaker. And for the most part, I would have to say that we're doing pretty fine in that regard, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister for Cumberland South on your first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are several important projects that have been announced and they're various stages of development. Projects like the one in Naquille, Argyll, one in my very own riding in the western part of Cumberland South. Mr. Speaker, they've been discussed at great length with the departments. Will the Speaker please advise and update the House today on the status of these long-term care facilities and when we can expect to see progress? The Minister, yes.
Yes, Speaker.
I believe that's directed to the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, during estimates, I had an opportunity to table a fair amount of information on the beds that have been awarded, where they've been awarded, the time frame for the various long-term care projects. And Mr. Speaker, I would be more than happy to search that out of the Hansard and provide that to the honourable member. I've had lengthy discussions with the honourable member from Argyll regarding the Naquille project, and that's a project that we're very supportive of, and we're very interested in seeing it go forward. And with respect to the project that the honourable member mentions from his constituency, although I'm not familiar with it, on an individual case basis, I will familiarize myself with it, and I'd be happy to discuss it with him if he so wishes.
The honourable member for Cumberland South on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister opposite for that. We've heard earlier today about people taking up beds in acute care facilities unnecessarily, the need to ensure that these long-term care beds are put in place. I've heard the Minister say that she's prepared to update the House in regards to answers she gave previously in regards to these issues. The one in my own area, there's a request for proposals was put out. I think it closed at the end of September. So I'd ask the Minister if she'll commit today to ensuring that she will commit the necessary resources so these projects I mentioned today can move forward as soon as possible.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, as I said, the additional long-term care beds and replacement beds, by and large around the province of the projects announced to date, are coming in on time and on budget. And this is very important, and I look forward to the project in the Minister's riding also coming in on time and on budget when we get to that stage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Glace Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, it's come to my attention that the East Division of Cape Breton Regional Municipality has received very little stimulus funding from the federal government, even though, Mr. Speaker, some areas, such as Central Nova, have received almost $88 million of federal stimulus money. So I want to ask the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal, Mr. Speaker, if to his knowledge, why has this division of Cape Breton Regional Municipality not been treated fairly by the federal government?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member from Glace Bay for this important question. Stimulus funding continues to be a challenging issue for this government, and I think it remains a constant issue for the CBRM in particular. I brought it to the members opposite, and at this time, I know I've been asked a number of times for the projects that have been approved that we have been successful in negotiating with the federal government. This list, and I'd like to table it for the member opposite if he is so interested. It's important that when it comes to the give and take and the negotiations, when it comes to getting appropriate dollars from the federal government, you have to be persistent, you have to be thorough, you have to make sure you're in constant contact, you have to be flexible. And that ongoing work is going to continue. I look forward to working with the member from Glace Bay, the mayor of the CBRM, to make sure that we get as much federal dollars, federal stimulus dollars available as possible.
The honourable member for Glace Bay on your first supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal would agree with me when I say that the federal government has been doling this money out in a way that is nothing short of shameful, Mr. Speaker. And I wonder if the Minister would like to ask the members from on his side of the House, from Cape Breton Centre, and other members in this constituency, in this legislature, for instance from Cape Breton West, if they think they're being treated fairly with stimulus money. My other question for the Minister is, Mr. Speaker, since the federal government isn't doing anything to aid the economic development of the East Division of the CBRM, what is his government doing?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the member opposite, I thank him again for the question. During the recent number of months, I've had one occasion to meet and speak with Mr. McKay on this particular topic. The negotiations that I'm involved with as the Minister responsible for infrastructure renewal in this province goes to the office of the Honourable John Baird. And I want you to know that I, as I've said before in this House, consider the fact that Mr. Baird has been open, he's been responsive to our requests from time to time. It does take some negotiations, there's no doubt. But I encourage the members of the CBRM, and I encourage the member opposite, if he would like to work with me more closely, making sure that we can consider some of the priorities that he sees that are necessary in his particular part of the province. But you know, I read the Herald too, and I know the member opposite is probably concerned about the fact there's politics being played when it comes to dollars being available from the federal government. And from the response that I've had so far, particularly from Mr. Baird, he has been open, he's been considerate, and he has extremely been compromising on a number of occasions.
The honourable member for Glace Bay on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, the stimulus money and the application from the CBRM was designed by staff to help all areas of that municipality with failing infrastructure. The East Division, in that report, was recognized by staff as having the most problems. But, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the numbers that are there, you'll find out that indeed, of the $9.9 million in projects that were submitted, just over $800,000 has been approved. North Division got 100% of the projects, 66.5% of the projects went to Central, and only 8%, 2 streets in New Waterford, were approved for funding, Mr. Speaker. So my question, Mr. Speaker, it seems to me that for the most part, East Division has been left out in the cold, and they really need these projects, Mr. Speaker. So my question to the Minister is, what projects from the federal stimulus funding is he selecting and approving for Glace Bay and the East Division of the Cape Breton Regional Municipality?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for those questions. And I'm fully appreciative of the fact that there are certain projects within his jurisdiction and certain projects on his famous island within the CBRM that are of great priority. And I want the member opposite to know that I've heard from my good friend from New Waterford about some of these issues. But the key thing is the challenges that we're facing as we continue to work with the federal government, the give and take, the negotiations, the back and forth. One has to be persistent if you're going to negotiate on behalf of your constituency. your province, or in this case, the regional municipality. I look forward to working with the member opposite. I look forward to working with the mayor of the CBRM to make sure that that particular part of Nova Scotia receives the priority that they should. But let's be clear on this. There's no point yelling and making a point of that there's politics being played here. There's stimulus dollars involved. There's stimulus dollars involved, and in Nova Scotia, we want our share of those dollars. And Mr. Speaker, I can assure you that we're going to continue to work with the federal government. We're going to make sure the federal government listens to our priorities that are brought forward by members of this side of the House, and on some occasions, that side of the House. And I thank you for your time.
The honourable member for Victoria the Lakes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Health Promotion and Protection. Madam Minister, your recent op-ed piece, courtesy of Communications Nova Scotia, talked about how the $2 million rink revitalisation program was not really a cut. Mr. Speaker, my question to the Minister. When you eliminate a $2 million program as part of the new fiscal budget, what would you call it?
The Honourable Minister of Health Promotion and Protection.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to answer the member's question. Mr. Speaker, the former government had a one-time program for rinks around the province. Mr. Speaker, they took $2 million, they divided it into 76. Everybody got $27,000, regardless of what their need was. Mr. Speaker, our government decided that this is probably not the best way to allocate provincial taxpayers' dollars, Mr. Speaker. We have 3 programs in the Department of Health Promotion and Protection for rinks. Rinks across this province continue to get money that they need for capital, for maintenance, and for other operational grants, Mr. Speaker, and we fully support rinks around the province and understand what an important role they play in communities. Thank you.
The honourable member for Victoria the Lakes on your first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The $2 million was part of the PC budget that was presented in May, so I guess the Minister has told us whose budget this one really is. Mr. Speaker, the Rink Revitalisation Programme assisted community rinks that needed that money. And had the Minister taken the time to talk to rink managers and understand the level of fundraising that is done for minor hockey, she would have grasped the importance of the programme. The former PC government realised the importance of supporting community infrastructure and supporting active lifestyles. That's why it was in our May budget. The other programs the Minister referenced in her article, the Community Recreation Capital Grants, a maximum of $20,000, Recreation Facility Development, a maximum of $150,000, and the BFIT program, a minimum of $450,000. My question for the Minister, how many of the 76 community arenas that we funded under the Revitalisation Program have qualified for funding under one of the 3 programs you boasted about in your op-ed piece?
The Honourable Minister of Health Promotion and Protection.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the honourable member for promoting our excellent programs in the Department of Health Promotion and Protection. And indeed, as the honourable member pointed out, there are 3 programs, and they are available to recreational facilities and rinks across the province, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Victoria the Lakes on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Minister is a bright person, and she's using a smokescreen to fool Nova Scotians and upset people in places like Inverness and Antigonish. Mr. Speaker, the people of Antigonish can see through the political Hail Marys and the crass, hastily made election announcements. The Minister must recognise that arena managers are faced with financial burdens that will ultimately be downloaded upon the people who use the ice time, mostly minor hockey children. A better deal for today's families, indeed. Minor hockey is a very popular sport in Nova Scotia, and it is also expensive, and many more children will be unable to access this activity if the NDP cannot recognize their error. Mr. Speaker, my question to the Minister, will you re-implement the rink revitalization program this fiscal year to assist in the transition of the rinks for the next fiscal year?
The Honourable Minister of Health, Promotion and Protection.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this Minister of Health, Promotion and Protection doesn't smoke. And Mr. Speaker, so I don't think, but with respect to the rink revitalization program, Mr. Speaker, we have 3 programs. They're based on need. There's an application program. People have to establish what their need is. They have to demonstrate what their plan is. They have to be accountable for the money they receive, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, any program that we have in the Department of Health Promotion and Protection will in fact be administered in that manner. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Economic and Rural Development. Mr. Speaker, now, previously in this House, we were advised that the World Trade Center project is under his department. Yet, of course, on October 1st of this year, the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal put out a press release calling on the Rank Group to submit a proposal for the development of the new World Trade and Convention Center. So my first question to the Minister of Economic and Rural Development is, on what criteria will you be basing the decision on whether the project should proceed?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And you know, the member opposite is quite true. The management, the administration of the World Trade and Convention Center comes under my portfolio. The actual construction of the center does not.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth East on your first supplementary.
All right. Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal will wax on for half an hour or so and tell us about how that criteria is selected. But, you know, but before he gets there, let me remind him that on November 15th of last year, the now Premier, then Leader of the Opposition, spoke out against the province meddling in areas of municipal responsibility. Yet the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal in his press release said, we're going to look at viewplanes. But the Premier was quoted in the Herald as saying, quote, what message does it send to all those people out there, all those developers who have projects? Is Premier MacDonald saying, look, don't bother coming to council, come to me? Well, Mr. Speaker, we now know he meant, wait, come to me, Premier Dexter.
Your question, please?
Yeah, I will. Okay, well, Mr. Speaker, the self-appointed Minister for Upstaging the Government, the member for Halifax Citadel Sable Island, said yesterday, tabled a petition from the Heritage Trust Group and then stepped outside to hold a press conference with them.
Your question, please.
My question to the Minister is, what criteria will be used to select the Trade Centre project, and does the member for Halifax Citadel Sable Island speak for government policy on this issue?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member from Dartmouth East for the question. This is an important issue. It's an important issue that I know that when you were in a previous life, if that's what it's called across the street here up at City Hall, I mean a previous career, this is an important issue. Excuse me, I'm being heckled by the member from Halifax Citadel Sable Island, if you notice. I want the member opposite to know, and I know we've had these discussions before, you know, if you are in a position in Cabinet and you are taking on the responsibility of collecting the good information, the correct information, because inevitably it will be my task to go to my Cabinet colleagues and say, I would recommend this particular decision. That's what we are currently in the middle of. That's why this process is proceeding the way it is. And it's an important discussion to have. It's an open discussion. And, you know, there were people in our gallery, and I'm waxing on for my 30 minutes now, if you notice. We had people in our gallery the other day. You know, some of them are close friends of mine and associates. And I want you to know we're listening to all sides as we make this decision. And when the time comes, the right decision will be made.
The honourable member for Dartmouth East on your final supplementary.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm going to make this fairly simple for the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal. In his press release, he suggested that they were going to look at two issues: the financial sustainability of the project, which I believe members of my caucus agree that the government should look at. But he also mentioned view planes. Well, the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board has actually ruled on that issue, and in appeals by the Heritage Trust in 2007 regarding the Twisted Sister project up the street, they said very clearly that under the Municipal Government Act, the MPS and Land Use Bylaw are developed and adopted entirely by the Municipal Council, in this case HRM. So, Mr. Speaker, my question for the Minister is, will the government abide by the existing decisions of the Utility and Review Board and the Court, and by the forceful comments of the Premier while in opposition, and allow HRM to make its own planning decisions?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, and I thank the member opposite for this question. Let's be clear on the fact, of course, there's some tough decisions to be made. Financial sustainability remains for this government a priority. I will tell you and I will assure you that on many occasions as a Minister of Infrastructure Renewal, whether it's an issue of such importance as the crosswalks, whether it's an issue when it comes to view planes, those issues are issues that should be taken care of by the municipal government. HRM by design has gone through this House. We have had our strong opinions expressed on it before this member was a member of this House. We've had our exchanges, we've had our decisions. The important issue is here, as we measure the pros and cons of this important project, we have to listen to all concerned. That is my responsibility as a minister responsible. I take that responsibility seriously, and when the time comes to bring the information forward, it will be the correct decision because we'll have the correct information.
The honourable member for Argyll.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Health Promotion and Protection. The future of the Queen's Place is now in question. The project has escalated in cost and now a projected cost of $21 million. This project was supported by all three levels of government previously, but the NDP, including the member for Queens, has been silent on whether it will step up to provide matching dollars to the federal government's commitment. My question to the Minister, will he provide matching dollars to the federal commitment? There you go.
The Honourable Minister of Health, Promotion and Protection.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if the future of Queen's Place is in question, that's news to me, Mr. Speaker. This government has committed $5 million to that project. We were the first ones into committing $5 million to that project, far before the federal government decided to put any money into that project. And let me tell you, the honourable member from Queens has been a very strong advocate for this project and continues to be, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Argyll on your first supplementary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Queen's Place project is an excellent example of investing in healthy lifestyles in our province. South Shore St. Margaret's MP Gerald Keddy stated that this project is not just about health promotion, but also about continued growth in the region. MP Keddy said the federal government would commit to 1/3 of the total cost, but they would only match the provincial amount as well. This is about this government's commitment to rural Nova Scotia. My question to the Minister, are you serious about creating health promotion opportunities that provide equal access for Nova Scotians regardless where they live in the province?
The Honourable Minister of Health Promotion and Protection.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, as I said, we remain very committed to Queen's Place. It's an excellent project. I had an opportunity to meet with the mayor from Liverpool and members of the planning group for this particular project. The people in my department are very enthusiastic about this project, and I'm looking forward to the day when Queen's Place is opened and we'll all be able to go there and view a world-class facility, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Argyll on your final supplementary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Councillor Darlene Norman is stating that they need to see action from their local MLA for Queens, as she is now a member of the NDP government. Councillor Doug Adams was emphatic that the project will go ahead. The will is there in Queens County, but I'm sure that everyone will agree that they need more financial assistance from the province to see this project go ahead. For a premier who has always boasted about his Queens County ties, now it's time to step up for the resident of Queens. My question for the Deputy Premier, will you remember the people who elected you in government by committing to match the 1/3 of the total cost for the Queens Place project?
The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Well, Mr. Speaker, while I agree wholeheartedly about the Premier bragging about where he's from in Queens County, I'm going to put this back to the Minister for Health Promotion and Protection.
The Honourable Minister of Health Promotion and Protection.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I remind all members of the House that the provincial share of the funding for Queen's Place is coming out of a $68 million fund that is there to build new recreational facilities around the province over 10 years. And Mr. Speaker, more than $62 million from that fund over the next 10 years has already been committed, including $5 million for Queens, the first project to be approved out of this new fund. And Mr. Speaker, there are still a number of communities around the province that are in the queue, hoping that they will be able to have excellent facilities like Queen's Place as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Glace Bay.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Health, Mr. Speaker. On February 6th of 2007, the government of the day announced that the Inverness Manor would be replaced. And this particular announcement, Mr. Speaker, was unique because the new manor would be linked to the Inverness Consolidated Memorial Hospital. When originally announced 2.5 years ago, the completion date was set for March of 2010. Mr. Speaker, we've been informed by construction workers that the project is months behind schedule and these workers fear they will soon be laid off. My question for the Minister is, could the Minister please indicate why there have been delays in construction of the new Inverary Manor?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I was saying earlier in question period, the addition of new beds into the system as well as replacement beds in the system pretty much is on budget and on time in all of the projects around the province, with the exception of some of the smaller ones, Mr. Speaker. Any number of issues can arise when you're doing a project like this, Mr. Speaker. Some projects have run into oil contamination, for example, on sites. I'm not sure if that's the case with the Inverness Manor, but I know that that has occurred. And from time to time, there have been questions around water and other issues that will result in the delaying of a project. Mr. Speaker, the thing that I think is most important for the members here to know is that this government is very committed to ensuring that the 800 beds that were announced will in fact be added into the system because, Mr. Speaker, we need those beds, and keeping seniors in the communities where they come from and close to their families and their loved ones continues to be a really important issue for us, and one that we are committed to ensuring we see in our healthcare system, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Glace Bay on your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the delays that are being experienced with the project are impacting the community, the seniors living there who took pride in the announcement of a new facility, the workers who are proud to be part of such a unique project. They impact the hard-working community members who have been fundraising to meet the community's financial contribution. So my question to the Minister is, could the Minister please advise us as to what she and her department have been doing to monitor the Inverary Manor project, and a monitoring effort that I may say appears to have gone terribly wrong, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I said earlier, the projects by and large, are on budget and on time around the province. In fact, we've seen the opening of some new long-term care facilities. For example, Bissett Court in Dartmouth. Celtic Court is another facility where we've seen an opening. But there have been some of the smaller projects have encountered certain difficulties. But, Mr. Speaker, our department continues to be in close contact with the various projects that are happening around the province. We hold meetings with the administrators of these facilities. And frankly, we do everything we can to make it possible to find solutions to keep projects moving forward on time, on budget, to ensure that those 800 beds are added into the system and Mr. Speaker, keep seniors in their home communities, close to their families, close to their friends, close to their networks. That's our objective, Mr.
Order,
Speaker.
Please. The time for oral question periods has expired. I'll recognize the honourable member for Cumberland South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today before question period, the instructions from yourself, and we'll certainly take direction from yourself, Mr. Speaker, you would remind members asking questions to have supplementary questions put directly related to questions asked, and I think those are similar words that you use, Mr. Speaker. I just want to point out, Mr. Speaker, that in the rules on page 34 of the Rules and Regulations says any such question shall be concisely put and shall relate only to the matters for which a minister is officially responsible. It doesn't talk about the issue of supplementary questions related to the original question. And of course, Mr. Speaker, in our rules as well, it says cases not provided for. In all cases not provided for, you shall make the decision, and we'll certainly abide by that, Mr. Speaker. But it says, firstly, the usages and precedents of this House should be considered first if it's not specifically written for in the rules. Mr. Speaker, I think you'd find on many occasions over the years that that has been allowed in this House repeatedly over and over and over again. In fact, you'll find that many times questions were put by members of ministers on the original question, and in fact, the questioner was switched to a different minister on the supplementary. So, Mr. Speaker, I'll ask that you please do some research, because this is a very important ruling that will determine the future of this House. So I'd ask that you do some research, please, and report your ruling back to this House. Thank you.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I find myself in some agreement with that, with parts of that member's argument. But the reality is that him and I have both been around this House about the same amount of time, and my recall of events are much different than his. And I wish you to pursue that. Thank you.
Okay. Well, honourable members, I will take that under advisement. It is a good point. I know you're serious about your concern, and I will do some research and get back to honourable members. We're ready now for opposition business for the Progressive Conservative Party, and it's Bill number 33, I believe is the first order of business.
And obviously, it's caused us to lose a couple of minutes, so I'd ask that we'll drop down 1 minute in each one until we pick up the 2 minutes at the end. So, okay. For the members that I've given the information to, please, and I'll call now Bill number 33.
Bill 33. The honourable member for Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, it gives me great pride to be able to stand here today and talk about Bill number 33. Bill number 33 is a very simple bill, and I'd like to read what it says so that everyone is aware. Chapter 376 of the Revised Statutes 189, Public Service Act, is amended by adding immediately after Section 17C the following section. Notwithstanding any enactment, all persons employed by Her Majesty in right of the province or otherwise employed in the public service of the province, whether or not included in a bargaining unit under any enactment, must be treated equally with respect to increase in wages or salary. Now, Mr. Speaker, there's a reason for this bill, and that reason was brought about by an announcement by the Honourable, the Deputy Premier of the province of Nova Scotia. And on October the 10th, he announced a new classification and pay plan for 1,800 provincial government managers and administrative support staff who are not represented through the collective agreements, that those employees will not receive an economic pay increase this fiscal year, this. And also, he went on to say, everybody will have to do a part to play to help live within our means. Now, Mr. Speaker, those are the words that were spoken by him. Yesterday, the member from Halifax-Chebucto got up in this House and read a resolution talking about 47 years of the founding of the NDP party. A party, as I understand it, was founded to help the working people of the province of Nova Scotia. And the member from Halifax-Chebucto took great pride in talking about that yesterday. And here we are today talking about a bill to make sure that people are created equal when it comes to the payment. The NDP ran a campaign with a slogan that said, a better deal for today's families. And when you read from parts of the platform, Mr. Speaker, and I'll be glad to table this, it says, Nova Scotia is a province with great people and a great future. To make for our province an even better place to work, that's what our NDP campaign is all about. Key commitments make it easier for families to get ahead. A very different approach from different other governments. Mr. Speaker, it also says in this campaign literature, it talks about Nova Scotia workers and managers can compete with the best in the province. And Mr. Speaker, I don't think there's anybody in this House that would disagree with that. We have some of the finest people in our public service here in Nova Scotia, and we're all very proud of the work that they do. However, the member from Halifax-Chebucto must be ashamed that his party, the party that he was celebrating here yesterday for 47 years, is taking advantage of working people in this province. They're saying that we're not going to treat them all the same. They're saying we're going to give them a raw deal, not a better deal, as they said during their campaign strategy, Mr. Speaker. And I can't believe that we're in this House talking about treating people fairly. How would the members of this House like to look to their left or their right and say, oh, that fellow gets paid more than I do, or that person gets paid more than I do? The fact of the matter is, the people in this province, the people that are doing the work for the public of this province, need to be treated fairly. And this bill, Mr. Speaker, will allow that to take place. It's an opportunity to make sure that people who are doing good work for the province of Nova Scotia get treated fairly, and are people who are there when we need them, and we should be there when they need us as people who are in government. This is not a better deal. It's a raw deal. 1%, Mr. Speaker, seems to be a theme with this government. We've been standing here and we've been hearing question after question about a deal with the community college instructors. And they're saying, oh, we're going to give them, all we can give them is 1%. So 1% it seems to be the theme of the government. A bill such as this would allow equal payment for work for all the people who work for the province of Nova Scotia. And I think that's a fair thing to do. And I'm sure that the people from the community college think that it's fair. And I'm very sure that the people who were told, the 1,800 employees that were told that they're not going to get anything but a change in the assessment rate of where they're at and how they stand in the payment scale, would say that they need to be treated as fair as anyone that happens to have the ability to be in a bargaining unit or who works for the province of Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, these people that we're dealing with, whether they're from the community colleges, whether they're people in our public service, they're Nova Scotians. They're the people who elected us to come here. They're the people who said we want to be treated fairly. That government said that we were going to do things different. Well, they're living up to that, Mr. Speaker, because they are doing things different. They're saying, we're giving you 1%, take it or leave it, we ain't going to talk about you. And by the way, as a minister, I have no responsibility for nothing. Well, Mr. Speaker, that's not the way it works in the province of Nova Scotia. The people that work in the province of Nova Scotia, the people who are members of the collective bargaining units, the people that are doing the jobs that need to be done to make this province operate in a proper fashion, need to be treated fairly. Nova Scotians are known to be compassionate people, yet we seem to be here in this House saying we're going to treat people different because of where they work or how they work or what they do for a living. Our public service is a good and strong public service, Mr. Speaker. It is a service that we as individuals need to be sure is looked after. The last thing we can afford is for people to leave here, to go away somewhere else because they're not getting treated fairly by the province of Nova Scotia and by the people who are forming the government of the day. A little while ago, during question period, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Health said that it was important that people get a competitive wage. Her words, she said that it was important that people get a competitive wage. What we're saying, Mr. Speaker, with this bill is that indeed it is important that people get a competitive wage, but also they get a fair wage, a wage that people are all treated equal. Because whatever service an employee applies or serves Nova Scotia with is a service that's valuable. And so their work is important to us, and they should be treated fairly when they're doing that work. And we hear time after time after time about the potential strike that's going to take place at the community college. And that strike will mean a devastating effect on people from one end of this province to the other. It'll mean that people will potentially lose some of their monies that they put in for tuition. It means that their courses will not be finished on time. It means the contracts that are put in place will not be able to be fulfilled, Mr. Speaker. And it's about treating people fairly. It's about making sure that we do what is the right thing. It's about making sure that people get a competitive wage for what they're doing. Our whole idea of presenting this bill was making sure that the people of the province of Nova Scotia, the public service, in whatever area that they service, we're sure to be treated fairly. It's not a good deal for them, it's a raw deal. You know, Mr. Speaker, we sit around here and we talk about wanting to do the right thing. This government of the day ran a campaign saying they wanted to do a better deal for the people of Nova Scotia. They wanted to be sure that the people of Nova Scotia were treated fairly. They wanted to be sure that the workers were treated fairly. Their whole party was built on a premise that the worker was a valuable and important person. And they are, Mr. Speaker. There is no question about that. And the first opportunity that this government had to make a difference, they decided, what are they going to do? We're going to change it. We're not going to give them a fair deal. We're going to give them 1%. We're not going to be treating everybody fairly. Now, Mr. Speaker, I've seen you operate in that chair, and it doesn't matter where we sit in this house. You treat people fairly because that's the right thing to do. That's the way we act in Nova Scotia. How is it that this government can sit there and say, we're not going to treat everybody that works for the province of Nova Scotia equally? That is the question that I'd like somebody to answer, and I'm sure when the Deputy Premier gets up, I'll hear some of his beliefs and where they're going with that. Mr. Speaker, this bill is a very simple, straightforward bill. It's a bill that addresses the question of fairness. It's a bill that will address the concerns of a lot of people who serve the people of the province of Nova Scotia. It's not a complicated bill. It's not a bill that will take a long time to be put through this House. But it is a bill, Mr. Speaker, that will allow people to feel they are being treated fairly by the government of the province of Nova Scotia. It is an opportunity to say to the people that work in our province, that work for this continuation of the betterment for the people of the province of Nova Scotia, it is an opportunity to say to them, we value your work. We value what you're doing. And Mr. Speaker, I know when the government Deputy Premier gets up, he's going to say, well, those fellows over on the other side, they spent like drunken sailors and they spent all the money and they got rid of all their, but the fact of the matter is, they tabled a budget, front-loaded it with all kinds of expenditures and never thought once, not once, about the people in the province of Nova Scotia that work here. They had an opportunity. 1% of one of their so-called trust funds would pay for this increase. It would look after the people of the province of Nova Scotia, Mr. Speaker, and it would be the right thing to do. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I look forward to hearing from my colleague across the way.
The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's always a pleasure to stand and speak in this august House, and in particular to speak about the Nova Scotia Civil Service and the important contributions they make to our life in this province, Mr. Speaker. As you may very well know, that their civil service is made up of approximately 11,000 employees, and this is a large group of diverse people with very diverse careers, Speaker. Now, civil service includes groups such as that are represented by the NSGEU. There is our correctional staff, the highway workers, and excluded management and administration employees, Mr. Speaker. As Minister responsible for the Public Service Commission, I'm proud that we are committed to a workplace that is free of discrimination and values, Mr. Speaker, diversity. The Public Service Commission has worked very hard to deliver and promote policies on fair hiring and creating respectful workplaces. Our government supports these policies because we believe in equality and fairness for all public servants, Speaker, all public servants. I believe that the member who brought Bill 33 forward has very good intentions. However, no changes are needed, nor are they necessary, Mr. Speaker. In fact, this suggestion could create inequity. As the learned member across the way knows, Mr. Speaker, there are many members out there who are parts of bargaining units. Now, these units negotiate at different times, depending upon their agreements, when they begin and when they can conclude, Mr. Speaker. While one unit may be in the middle of a 3-year agreement, another unit may be ready to negotiate a new collective agreement. Wage rates are just but one item that are being negotiated, and I know very well that that member understands that and would agree with me on it. These varying times and circumstances influence negotiations, Speaker. What is required for one group today may not be a priority for another group 3 years from now, Mr. Speaker. As well, the process of negotiation must be done without foregone conclusion. We cannot dictate, nor would we want to dictate, the outcome of an open negotiation process, Mr. Speaker. As noted, wages are but one part of a collective agreement, Mr. Speaker. There are many parts to a collective agreement, including benefits and even the language used, Mr. Speaker. Agreements are influenced by a particular group's needs. Now, Mr. Speaker, we could see what a group of employees that work in a clerical setting, for instance, would be much different than the members who work driving our snow plows, that work in our forestry industry. So these are competing needs. So the idea of having a bill of one size fits all could cause us a great deal of problems, Mr. Speaker, because it's such a peculiar thing. I mean, there's outside of the federal civil servants, Mr. Speaker, there's no applicable employer that has so many collective agreements with so many diverse employees. You have, again, I would say, like you would have people that would do highway maintenance, and then you would have doctors. You would have very diverse communities of interest, Mr. Speaker. So again, I honestly believe that the Bill 33, as put forward, as I mentioned earlier, Speaker, is well-meaning, but it's not founded in a route that we can really work. It's a very simplistic answer to a very, very difficult question. And the question is community of interest. And that's often used in collective bargaining around, you know, what does these diverse groups have in common? Now, there's a commonality of employer, but there's not a commonality of circumstance, Speaker. There must be, we just can't go in and say, in this day and age, that For instance, if we're looking for a medical officer of health and what the diverging markets have put on that compared to maybe another set of criteria for another job, Speaker. So these are issues that where if we were to lock ourselves in to say, okay, that's it. You know, we're looking for a lawyer in the Department of Justice and we're looking for an engineer in TIR. These are vastly different criteria, nonetheless less important than the other, but it's a whole different play in the job market. So these are some of the factors, Speaker, as we in recruitment challenges around these particular positions. We sometimes have to continue, or consider, Mr. Speaker, retention and attraction of certain jobs when negotiating these agreement packages. Mr. Speaker, again, I go back to what my friend from Cape Breton West mentioned earlier, and he talked about the questions is put in question period, and rightfully so. The fact that some skill sets from time to time are more competitive in the job market, and by virtue of that, your ability to demand a higher base salary because of the job market dictates the flexibility of the employer, in this case, the province of Nova Scotia, to react to that. And you know, that is some of the things. I mean, I will. This bill today, and the one thing I will disagree with the member who put it forward, my standing in my place today is not about beating up on any former governments. This is about, and I agree with the member. It's about treating workers fairly, and in a contextual perspective, Mr. Speaker, it's not as easy as it seems, and I'm taking this bill as a bill that says, look, we've got to do something, and I agree with him, Mr. Speaker. As you're aware, you know, last week when I informed the House about the new classification and pay system for the 1,800 provincial government managers and administrators and support staff who are not represented by unions through a collective agreement, this system, Mr. Speaker, is more than 25 years old. And we had to do something, Mr. Speaker. This is, the structure was old and out of date, wasn't reflective of some pay scales. We were moving people up the scales to meet. We were again putting people in pay bands that were and sometimes knee-jerk, sometimes a reaction to the real pressures of the job market. And so therefore, we had to do these things. And like, as I just mentioned a minute or so ago, that's the reality of the job market. And as I say, these are 25 years old. This is not talking about blaming anybody. It's the reality of every once in a while, whether it's the public or the private sector, you step back and say, well, do we got to rethink our human resource initiatives? And I think this is what we did. You know, it's the structure of government, the nature of the work, and classifications and practices have evolved significantly. And I think that's important to look at over a 25-year period. And I wish that it was as simple as Bill 33 purports it to be. It's just, you know, give everybody this utopian same amount. I don't know whether my friend from Cape Breton West has become such a socialist that he figures everyone should get the same pay band, but I don't think he does in that. I think he sees this in a wider context, Mr. Speaker. But well, the bill, the member for Cape Breton West said he thought the bill was simple, and I agree with that. The bill is simple. It's too simple, because it doesn't reflect the realities of what government has to deal with. Mr. Speaker, and take this in the context, man, if it was simple to do, we would not have had this problem hanging around for 25 years. If it was that simple. These bans weren't changed to be injurious to any party. It was to bring some sanity to that, Mr. Speaker, because the new classification system for MCP and AS employees provides that better framework to go into the future. Now, Mr. Speaker, again, we have to live within our fiscal means. It's as simple as that. And when that ship is righted, they will be duly acknowledged, Mr. Speaker. The result will be, though, in these changes, Mr. Speaker, the result will be a more efficient classification positions and a decrease of the number of classifications and appeals, Mr. Speaker. It will provide more flexibility in temporary assignments, transfer, and improved succession in management, which is very important, Mr. Speaker, because when we have the capable women and men that are leading our civil service, they need that straight path forward, Mr. Speaker. They have to know how that operates, and that's what some of these bands do. And there are like recruitment and retention challenges, and this will help us to attract and hang on to these excellent employees, Mr. Speaker. I also talked about the fiscal reality, Mr. Speaker. No question it would be great to pay higher wages to all our employees, Mr. Speaker, but the economic downturn has hit Nova Scotia hard, very hard, Mr. Speaker, and provincial revenues are down tens of millions of dollars, Mr. Speaker. And the economic and financial projections for the year ahead aren't much brighter, Mr. Speaker. We have to make tough choices, and now we'll have no choices at all. As a result, the province's 1,800 excluded employees will not receive an economic adjustment this year. 1% of payroll will be used to move these employees into this new system, Mr. Speaker. Next year, we will provide 1% payroll increase to adjust salary bands, Speaker. Nova Scotia has been on an unsustainable path, and we have to play a part in helping us live within our means, Mr. Speaker. So while I understand the member's intention with this bill, there is no need to amend the Public Service Act at this time regarding wages, Mr. Speaker. The government will continue to work very hard to ensure all public servants are treated with respect and fairness. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The honourable member for Dartmouth East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And you know, I'm starting to believe that the end of every minister's statement ends with "we were on an unsustainable path." And frankly, with this government's budget, they've left it on an unsustainable path. Mr. Speaker, the Deputy Premier took the easy way out, and what he did was he talked, instead of talking about what the bill was really trying to get at and the problem that his government has created, he instead talked about the fine details of a bill that, frankly, I don't suspect the Progressive Conservative Party thinks will be called for a final vote anyway. I believe that they were bringing this forward. I believe they were bringing this forward so that there would be what is a very important debate, a debate that the government seems not willing to listen to, and I applaud them for bringing that forward because this is an important issue. And so, you know, the Deputy Premier has taken the easy way out because he knows he doesn't have to call the bill, and so he talked about that instead of talking about the real issue that's been raised by the Progressive Conservatives through Bill 33. Mr. Speaker, you know, it's interesting because the Deputy Premier took the opportunity in a op-ed piece last week to say that his government hasn't done any rollbacks or wage freezes. Well, I think you may want to talk to some of those non-unionized employees, which I've done in the past couple of days, who are angry as hell and actually feel they've been rolled back. And that's the campaign they're organizing, is that they've been rolled back because they expected 2.9%, and now they're at 1%. I'm pretty sure that's what they call a rollback. And since the Premier works for the government and not Walmart, rollbacks are really not where we should be going in this day and age. Mr. Speaker, it's threatening, the fact is it is threatening the retention of employees in the province of Nova Scotia. I've talked to many who are openly looking for other options. I've talked to people who, you know, interestingly, I was over at the Department of Tourism, Culture and Heritage yesterday, and in that department, the staff are openly talking in the halls about how angry this is. And it's not just the non-unionized staff, the unionized staff as well, who they listened and heard that the reclassification had happened for the non-union staff. And a number of them piped in and said, well, actually, there's a group of us who have been waiting now for a number of years for a reclassification. Where's ours? So what's happened is the government has just perpetuated a system that was in trouble and made it even worse. Mr. Speaker, the government has created the 1% solution. Now, when I was going to high school, the 1% solution referred to something different than wages, and it wasn't good then and it's not good now. And the fact of the matter is that this government, this party, the NDP, when they were in opposition, and when you listen to their federal counterparts, it's all about collective bargaining, bargaining in good faith. And I have never seen an example of a government claiming to be bargaining in good faith, and in fact bargaining in such bad faith as the current Nova Scotia Community College situation, because today in question period, members of the cabinet stood up and said, well, we're not the employer. Well, no, but they are the ones that provide the money. They had, according to the community college, who send out a letter, said that we don't have any money from the government, so they have effectively told the community college management what the limit of the offer can be, and the community college management has put that on the table, and we all know that that's 1%. That, Mr. Speaker, is not in any way, shape, or form bargaining in good faith in any definition of the phrase. In fact, that is bargaining by ultimatum. And that is exactly the kind of tactic that the NDP criticized in opposition. Exactly the tactic that the opposition criticized when they were in opposition. Yet, over and over and over, this government says they're bargaining in good faith. They're not. They would have been better off coming in and proposing legislation, since they have a majority, and legislating 1%, because that's all they're willing to offer, and they've said that's the cap. They've told the management of the community college, apparently, that that's the cap. The community college has put out a letter, management has put out a letter saying, listen, we agree. You deserve 2.9%. We can't give it to you. And the answer from the government is, we're not the employer. In fact, the government is effectively the employer and is the one that should be at the table in a situation like that. Mr. Speaker, the Deputy Premier, when he stood up, said, there are no foregone conclusions. I don't know, that 1% sounded like pretty much a foregone conclusion. In fact, the 1% for the non-union staff and the 1% for the community college staff both sounded like a foregone conclusion. There didn't seem to be any negotiation there at all. And every message from both sides of the bargaining table. Mr. Speaker, this is crazy. In the Nova Scotia Community College situation, you got two sides at the bargaining table who both agree that the government is the one that's not giving anybody the money to move anywhere. In fact, you talk to the teachers union, they're not mad at the management of the community college, because the management of the community college has put their cards on the table and said, this is what we have, this is the money we have. Not there. And of course, they didn't treat the non-union employees last week in good faith either. People who have been waiting for a number of years to see those job reclassifications, and instead, Mr. Speaker, they said, we will give you those job classifications, but we're not giving you the salary that goes with them. It's kind of meaningless, isn't it? Because for how many years will these employees fight to get back to the place that they should be? How many years will those non-union employees have to fight to bring the wages up to the classification level it should be? And when they get there, how far away from that classification band will they end up being? They'll be further away. Some of these people will be in another classification band, most likely. Mr. Speaker, the Deputy Premier, or I guess he was speaking as the Minister responsible for the Public Service Commission, outlined the fact that he values diversity, that the department values diversity, and that they've done a lot in terms of race relations in the workplace and safety and all these sorts of things. I don't disagree with him on that. And I'm happy, and I applaud this government. I applaud all the governments and members of any party that have done work on that. But don't get up and tell me you're bargaining in good faith, when in fact you are not bargaining in good faith. You're not bargaining at all. And when you go, the only thing that I can say that's consistent is that they're treating the non-union employees last week and the union ones at Nova Scotia Community College the same, by giving them a 1% ultimatum instead of providing them in good faith what they promised. And I wonder, Mr. Speaker, if we have a strike next week, and I'll tell you right now, Mr. Speaker, I hope that we don't, but just down the street from my house is Acreley Community College, and I know well the programs that go on there, and not only the programs, but the importance of those facilities to the community. And that's something we haven't talked a lot about here, is what happens when that facility becomes unavailable to the public? Because I'm not crossing the picket line. Is any member of the government benches going to cross the picket line to go use the facilities in a community college? Probably not. So, Mr. Speaker, what happens in the community and when we really see the impact of that strike? And how will the NDP government feel about being the first government in Nova Scotia history to end up with a province-wide teachers walkout? It's an interesting question, isn't it? Boy, that's one way to start a new government. Mr. Speaker, the Deputy Premier said that varying times mean different solutions. There's no question about that. But the fact of the matter is, it has always been a tradition in Nova Scotia, and it has always been, in fact, de facto the rules that the Nova Scotia Teachers College local and the public school teachers, those contract negotiations and the wage increases have always, for the 15 years since those contracts have been put together in two separate locals, have always been in lockstep, Mr. Speaker, in terms of the wage increase. And I challenge any member of this government to explain to those teachers why all of a sudden they are less valuable than the other teachers, when for 15 years, regardless of economic situation, those contracts have been in lockstep. I see some glum faces over there, but nobody willing to jump up and explain that one. Mr. Speaker, the fact that, and of course, maybe the member for Halifax Sable Island, since he likes to speak so much for government policy, sounds like he may have something to say, but that might get him in trouble again. Mr. Speaker, the fact of the matter, the fact is, when we look at that and we look at these non-union employees, this group of 1,800 or so employees in Nova Scotia, many of whom are now angry as heck. And they are angry. I've had the calls. I've talked to some of them in the offices, and they are angry because they were so happy that the government was looking at this and saying the reclassifications are going to happen and we're going to implement them. They did not expect, Mr. Speaker, that they would be locked down to 1%. In fact, when we heard it was going to happen, the member for Glace Bay said to me, there's a lady in my constituency who will be so happy. Then he read the ministerial statement and said, she's not going to be so happy after all. Because the fact is that those employees have been treated unfairly for years, and now all that this government has done with that pool of employees is treated them even more unfairly. And I actually didn't think that was possible. I didn't think it was possible to treat those people who had been waiting so long to get the proper classification, to treat them more unfairly than they had already been treated. And somehow this government managed to do it. Mr. Speaker, all right, I got one more minute, do I? Well, Mr. Speaker, I want to wrap up by going to where I was at the beginning of this. You know, this bill, and the thing about this bill is that they ask for fairness, and the important thing is that must be treated equally. This government has already shown they have no intention of treating any employee group in this province equally. Not going to happen. In fact, they're going to dictate to them what the rules are, and they're not going to allow good faith bargaining to happen. It's a surprise. It's a surprise based on all the comments that I've heard over the years in opposition. In fact, in many respects, it's the opposite of what I expected. Mr. Speaker, I applaud the intent of this bill. I applaud the fact that this very important issue is being brought forward today, and being brought forward today on a day when you have many angry non-unionized civil servants in this province, very angry and increasingly angry, as well as many increasingly angry Nova Scotia Community College teachers who all feel that they are being treated unfairly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The honourable member for Hants West.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to say that it's an honor to stand in my place today to discuss this very important bill, but you know, Mr. Speaker, it's discouraging that we even have a bill like this on the floor of this House to begin with. What are we doing? Here we are talking about treating employees in the province of Nova Scotia unfairly. The minister responsible, the Deputy Premier, stood over there a short while ago, said a whole lot of nothing, but he did say a couple things that I thought I'd better write down, because I never thought in all my 3 years plus here now that I would have heard that member speak like this. He says, we need to rethink the human resource issue. How many times did that member rethink those issues when he was on this side of the House? I can tell you, I don't think he stopped to breathe when he was on this side of the House and he had something to say, because I was over there and I was listening. He had all kinds to say about how we treated our employees, public employees, contracts, teachers, you name the contract that was coming up, it was an issue. Not an issue anymore. They should be arm's length or whatever stance they're going to. We're not getting involved. Can't get involved, Mr. Speaker. Well, I wonder. We're going to tell these people 1% across the board. And I've had a lot of emails, phone calls from these folks, and they're wondering, how could this possibly take place? They're even saying, you know what, we had some hope. We wanted to see a change in Nova Scotia. We've seen that historical change, and by golly, we're seeing something even more historical today in this House by way of debating this bill. Unbelievable, Mr. Speaker, that we would be debating this bill, the Public Service Act, and fairness about the people that work in this province. And I know the members over there, they can smile all they want about how they think this is okay. This isn't okay. This is a serious issue for all members of this House. And the people in Nova Scotia, Mr. Speaker, expect that we, as all 52 members in this House, will come to this House regardless of our partisan politics and put it aside. And that we will work together to make Nova Scotia a better place. Well, we heard about a better place during the last campaign. The NDP did a great job out there selling a better deal, a better deal, a better deal. I've had a lot of calls recently that are saying, what happened to the better deal? Where did that go? They're seeing now that there is no better deal. They have no answers for a variety of things, Mr. Speaker. They have no answers. But I can tell you, the 1%, that's one. The 1% maybe that's being offered to the Nova Scotia Community College, well, 1 and 1 this time don't make 2, makes 1. There's some interesting math by a new government, isn't it now? 1. Standard practice dictating to the people in this province how it's going to go. Valued employees? I think not. Not by this government. How far was it from this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, to get across there? You'd think it took 3 years to make that walk with the incredible change that we've seen in the time to think, but it was like that. Just a click of the thumb, Mr. Speaker, like that. It was done. Changes. And not good changes. Not the better deal that was promised in the campaign. Nowhere near it. They're dictating now what the civil servants in this province will get, 1%. Well, Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you that 1% is not in line with what's fair. And these people know that. And everybody in this House knows that, but they're not willing to stand up and say it. They're not. For whatever reason, they're not willing to stand up and support the valued people in this province, Mr. Speaker. Why, I don't know. But these people still have to put bread and butter on their table. They still have to buy gas to go to those jobs and work hard every day for Nova Scotians, but that's set aside. We're not paying attention to that. We're going to offer you 1%. 1% won't buy the gas. 1% certainly won't buy the loaf of bread and the quart of milk they need to feed their families, Mr. Speaker. What about these students now, for example, in a community college? Here we are. The minister says, we're not going to get involved. Yet it's taxpayers' money that's paying the wages, but we're not going to get involved. It's broke down. Negotiations have broke down. They're asking for binding arbitration. You know, Mr. Speaker, I spent a lot of years in a union environment and in a non-union environment. I can tell you, both had their own pros and cons. There's no question about that. And I know other members in this House have been involved in that. In the early days when I was in the EMS system as a paramedic, I worked for a company that was one of 52 in this province. We were non-union. We had to negotiate for ourselves, and it wasn't always a pleasant thing because not much came by way of it. But as the years, I do remember the strike. I remember the strike well. I remember it very well. And I know what side I was on at that time, and I know, unfortunately, where I was working that evening. I do indeed know. Tough times, and it's going to be a tough time when the members walk out that are teachers in this province next week. And I hope that that doesn't happen. I hope there's a resolution before that. And I think it's incumbent upon the members of this House to continue, especially on the opposition side, if government doesn't want to listen, to keep instilling that message. The teachers are calling. They're calling me. They're calling you. They're calling everybody. I know they're calling over there, too. You're getting the emails because I see them. They're trying to make their points, the points of fairness, and it is points of fairness. Now, going back to the community colleges, here we have it. If they go out, what's going to happen to the students? Some of these people have quit their jobs, have left employment to better themselves in this province so that they can stay around here with their families in the years ahead, Mr. Speaker. What's going to happen to those students out there that have taken out student loans? Is the government in Nova Scotia going to pick up the tab, write them off, pay them during the course of their time out of school? What's going to happen with those? That's just one question. What about, I brought it up in question period today, the CCAs. We're about 400 plus short In a previous meeting in this House, with regards to the public accounts, we asked a question about CCAs, 440 or so short in this province. They're being trained through the Nova Scotia Community College system. In my area, we have Dykeland Lodge, which hosts that. It's an offshoot of NSCC. They train the people, they sponsor, as do all the other seniors facilities in my area, the long-term care facilities like the Windsor Elms, sponsor students to go to that school. Pay money, support them, bursary. What's going to happen to that? Where will they be? Turned away? They won't graduate. What will happen then? Not graduating or late graduating? Again, Mr. Speaker, we'll put this huge delay in our seniors being looked after in long-term care facilities. It's not right, Mr. Speaker, not right at all. It's cruel and unusual punishment by a government that bragged about their union support. And the union is saying today, this is interesting, we have somewhere around 350 contracts in the next year and a half or so that need to be negotiated in this province, some of them with retro. What about the bus drivers that are out there right now? I know in my area, the member from down the valley, Kings West, knows all about it too. How long has that gone on? 2 years now or more? So they're trying to get back to the table. But what did the NDP promise? What did the NDP promise during the campaign to those people, those bus drivers? They promised everything. That's correct. We'll get back to the table. We'll solve that issue for you. Where'd that go? Out the window, along with the other. Better deal for today's families. Yeah, better deal for today's family. All right, they're looking now and going. And you know what? You know what's hurting these people? They supported the NDP in this province. They supported the NDP who have let them down in this province.
Order, please. The honourable member for Hants West has the floor. The honourable member for Hants West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And that's all right. We can take a little bit of that heckling. No problem there. No problem at all. We can take that and we can give it back too. Because we're talking about an important issue here today, Mr. Speaker. That's the people. The people striking a chord. That's right. With that guy over there, we should be striking a chord. He knows. His union brotherhood, he knows. That's okay. Nothing wrong with supporting unions. We all work for everybody in this province, or so-called that is the deal it's supposed to be. That's what the people, as I've said, in this province expect. 52 members come to the legislature in Nova Scotia to get the people's business done. Is the people's business getting done? I think not. Them people in the gallery the other night during the emergency debate, was the people's business getting done? No. They listened to the minister say what? What did the minister say? The minister said, I'm not getting involved in that. Why is that? They can't understand how the people that supported them can be left hanging, walking away. 1%, there you go, take it or leave it. There's a deal for you now, isn't it? How do I go home and tell my kids, I can't afford to buy you a new pair of shoes or put food on the table or heat my house this year because you're offering me 1%? How am I going to pay for the gas to get back and forth to work, to school? Twice as much? Oh, come on, honourable member. Get in touch with reality. The NDP have to get in touch with reality in this province to support the people. And yet you can laugh and you can quote and you can hackle all you want. Go right ahead, bring it on. Because the people are listening. The people, the teachers are listening. The civil servants in this province that serve you, member, are listening. But guess what? You're not listening to them. Not at all. Not even close to listening to them. What are you doing? Well, we're not getting involved. Outrageous is right. Not getting involved. But that's all right. You keep barking. They're listening. They want to hear it all. And they're going to hear it all. And so are you when the strike line comes. Let's see what happens then. You're going to take every contract, all 350 that are to be negotiated in the next year and a half? Keep going. Bring it on. Bring it on. Keep going, member. Bring it on. You'll have an opportunity to stand up. Come on. Bring it on, member from Pictou. Bring it on. I have no problem listening to it. We'll take it all. Don't call order, Mr. Speaker. Let it go. I enjoy it. Bring it on. Let it go. Keep it coming because the people need to know. All you want to do is sit over and hackle and keep flapping. And I'm surprised the muzzle part hasn't been put on today. But that's okay. Bring it on. Bring it on. No problem. Let the people in Nova Scotia know. Let them know. That's right. Maybe the Premier will want to stand up and have a few words at some point in this evening's debate. Who knows? Just hard to say here, isn't it? But the people are anxiously awaiting his comments, as well as the minister's comments of the public service, the Minister of Education's promises, and maybe the member back there who likes to often make, no, I can't say that, who wants to be out front all the time and speak for his Premier, and speak for the deputy, and speak for every member over there from Sable Island, who he represents. Twice as much, he says. Twice as much, all right. We'll see, won't we, in the end of the day, when next week gets here, what was offered and what's going to be offered and what won't be offered, because it appears, in the eyes of the people in Nova Scotia, the civil servants, the teachers, that the NDP government in this province don't care at all about them, don't care about their families, don't care about what's down the road, don't care that there's a cold season coming, they're going to have to heat. What are they going to do around the strike line? Members, tell us that. Go ahead and blurt out some more so they can hear you. Maybe we'll get an enhancer that can be recorded. I want the people of this province to know, what's the NDP going to do? Not going to do anything. That's what they're going to do. They're going to drag everything out. 350 contracts. They're going to let them all go to the bitter end. Binding arbitration. They've asked for it. I've been through binding arbitration. Sometimes it's the only thing left. And right now it appears it is the only thing left. Why won't this government agree and let it go to binding arbitration? What have they got to lose? What they got to lose is a fair settlement. That's what they got to lose. The option's on the table. They don't want to pay the people of Nova Scotia fairly. Isn't that's the case? Despicable. Absolutely despicable. Mr. Speaker, 1%. Is that fair? Not a chance. Tell that to the kids at home of these people who come to work every day and don't say, I'm not coming to work because, oh, I don't like this and I don't like. They come to work for Nova Scotians every day. They deserve to be at least paid equally, the 2.9% across the board that's been offered. And what's going on? Nothing's going on. That's what's going on. Not a thing going on. Don't forget who put you where you are, honourable members, in the NDP party and the government party. Stand up and listen. Remember, bring it on. Stand up and listen. Let the people hear you hackling about not caring. Not caring at all. Because that's what they see today is nothing getting done. Nothing getting done by this NDP government, and they should expect nothing less. We're seeing the real NDP as the months go by. It's coming out. They're going to see more, and I can't wait for those other 350 or so contracts to come alive in this House, and they'll be debated on the floor when needed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you. We will now go to Resolution 168, and the Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Argyll.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I found it fun to see the member for Halifax Citadel standing up to try to defend himself for all the heckling that he was doing earlier on. But, Mr. Speaker, very pleased tonight to stand and speak to resolution number 168, which again brings forward the issue of ER closures in our province. And, Mr. Speaker, I can speak at length to ER closures in this province, an issue that been going on for a long time. One that, Mr. Speaker, that this government, this NDP government, had said on time and time again when they were sitting in opposition, when they were running the election, they said that they had the answers. Mr. Speaker, they ran on a premise that this is what we're going to have to do. And what have we seen to date, Mr. Speaker, from the NDP on finding the solution to ER closures? And, Mr. Speaker, not only the ER closures, but ER overcrowding. I got to add that little tidbit in as well, because I can speak a long time to that one as well. They've done nothing. They've hired a consultant. And, you know, why, Mr. Speaker, would you hire a consultant? Well, because you really don't have any ideas yourself, so you hire somebody else. So in case that person makes some bad, suggestions or hard suggestions, well, you can blame the consultant. You don't have to blame yourself. Mr. Speaker, we're experiencing and continue to experience in the last 100 and some odd days, and I forget what, I'm sure one of the members from the NDP know how many days they've been sitting over there in government. It's like 112 or whatever it is. But it's been an awful long time. But, Mr. Speaker, they've done nothing. They've done nothing to alleviate the issue of ER closures. Mr. Speaker, today, just to be a tad off topic, but it still has to do with ERs and Southwest Nova Scotia and what's happening in Digby County right now, which is the issue of the nurse practitioner. We do have a temporary schedule of nurse practitioner coverage at the Islands Health Centre. Has been developed. It's available this week on Thursday, October 15th and Friday, October 16th. And starting next week, a nurse practitioner will be available Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and every other week. Once in a while. So where are the residents of Long and Briar? Where are they going to end up? Well, they're going to end up at the ER in Digby. Well, Mr. Speaker, let's talk about the Digby Emergency Department, which is closed. It's closed Wednesday, October 14th until Thursday, October 15th. It's closed Monday, October 19th, Wednesday, October 21st, Thursday, October 22nd. And, Mr. Speaker, I can go on and on of the real problem now. Shelburne, Roseway Hospital is seeing the same pattern. That I know that the member for Shelburne and the Minister of Fisheries has talked on a number of occasions saying the NDP have the solutions to keep the ER open at Roseway. Mr. Speaker, we are still seeing closures in hospitals right around Nova Scotia. And we will continue to see closures in Nova Scotia unless this NDP government wakes up a little bit. You know, we can hide behind Dr. John Ross. And like I said during questioning, Dr. John Ross is a very experienced emergency room doctor. I had the opportunity to meet with him on a couple of occasions. The guy's got some bright ideas. He's got some good ideas. But they are long-term ideas. They're ideas that are going to take not only the year that it's going to take to come up with the report, it's going to take years to implement. Mr. Speaker, our document, the FSOR, which I know that the Minister of Health has committed to continuing the work on, does have some solutions as well. But I know that the member for Colchester North has talked about on a number of occasions when she was Minister of Health, that it took a meeting of the minds in Colchester and they solved their ER closure problem with Tatamagouche. Just like that. Many of these ERs can be held open with some adjustments, with some solutions that are on the ground. Digby knows full well what it needs to do in order to solve the ER closure problem in Digby. Shelburne knows exactly what it needs to do in order to solve that ER closure. So I'm hoping that John Ross, Dr. Ross, has gone down to those areas and got the information that they need so that they can make immediate changes so that those ERs can stay open. And I can table these documents as well that talks about these closures that I watch so closely in southwest Nova Scotia. But Mr. Speaker, I want to maybe look a little bit at the better deal for Nova Scotia's families or today's families. You know, the really blue with a little bit of orange document that was brought out during the election. And if I keep emergency rooms open, you know, the #2 commitment really, and there was a number of issues that were immediate and of course in the first year. Open the hospital beds needed to admit patients stuck in overcrowded ERs. $4.85 million was the estimated cost. We haven't seen any movement on that. Emergency Department Protection Fund to hire needed doctors and keep ERs running. $3 million, Mr. Speaker. Open Cobequid Community Health Center. I know the member for Sackville-Cobequid will talk about this one, of keeping that one open 24/7. They've got a paltry number of $2.25 million put in here. That won't even come close to getting that emergency room open on a 24-hour basis because you have to have a full hospital there in order to have a full-time ER. And I know the member will probably speak to that when he gets the opportunity to comment on this resolution. You know, provincial advisor to lead emergency care improvement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, and I can go on of all the things that were in this document that got them elected. And I got to say, it got them elected. But Mr. Speaker, they got elected on this document. These are the promises that the member for Pictou East brought forward. You know, I see him in here, but what is he doing about it? He can stand over there and bark all he wants, but nothing in this document have this government done, nor will they actually have the capability to do, because the Minister of Finance is going to be all over it and not provide the Minister of Health with the funding required. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to see what the member for Sackville-Cobequid is going to say, because he's going to blame us, because he always does. But Nova Scotians are getting tired of that junk. They're getting tired of it. So let's see what he's got to say.
Thank you. The honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and It is, again, an honour to stand, especially to talk and debate an important issue like emergency room closures, Mr. Speaker. I know firsthand, Mr. Speaker, from my career before I entered these chambers, Mr. Speaker, how important emergency rooms are to Nova Scotians, especially in rural communities, Mr. Speaker. And I know after I've entered this chamber, Mr. Speaker, how important it is for a government to act and make it a priority, Mr. Speaker. And that's what one of the things we're going to do, Mr. Speaker, make it a priority. Something I believe the previous government did not do, Mr. Speaker. They only made it a priority, Mr. Speaker, when we were just on the eaves of an election, Mr. Speaker. You would see the announcements. You would see the money flowing to certain areas of the province, Mr. Speaker. We're taking the steps we've outlined in the campaign, Mr. Speaker, to improve health care. And that means addressing emergency room closures. Emergency room coverage is a long-standing issue, Mr. Speaker, a problem that cannot be fixed overnight, Mr. Speaker. And I believe Nova Scotians spoke very loudly, Mr. Speaker, on June 9th to give us the ability to make healthcare a priority for this government, Mr. Speaker, for my government, Mr. Speaker. And I think Nova Scotians will give us that time to bring forward the initiatives that we outlined in our campaign that will make an improvement, will definitely improve delivery of healthcare to Nova Scotians around the province, Mr. Speaker. Anyone experiencing medical emergency, Mr. Speaker, knows that we have a great emergency services here as our paramedics. There are men and women who are based throughout this province, Mr. Speaker. And I have to say that they've picked up the slack often, Mr. Speaker, over the last number of years, especially over the last 10 or 12 years, Mr. Speaker, with the transformation of that service and the ability to really provide world-class health care in the homes, Mr. Speaker, in the ditches and in the accidents and on the roads and streets that we see around the province, Mr. Speaker. That transformation is important, and I'm glad to see that we did have the improvements to that system, Mr. Speaker, because of the often closures that we see throughout Nova Scotia, Mr. Speaker. During the election, Mr. Speaker, one of our commitments was to appoint an emergency room advisor. And, Mr. Speaker, we've kept that commitment. Some short 3 months into our mandate, Mr. Speaker, we've kept that commitment. With the appointment, Mr. Speaker, of Dr. Ross to that appointment, Mr. Speaker, is vital to addressing some of the concerns with emergency room closures, Mr. Speaker, because I must say he's an expert in that field. And I don't think there's anybody in this province, especially other emergency room physicians, other paramedics, other nurses, other healthcare providers who work in the healthcare field, Mr. Speaker, would agree with me that having somebody with that expertise, Mr. Speaker, looking at areas in the province and issues in the province, especially around emergency room closures, is the key to addressing some of the concerns that we see, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of Health spoke earlier today about the fact that Dr. Ross will be going around the province, Mr. Speaker, to see what's going on in certain areas of the province, especially, I think, the area of Digby, where we know there's been chronic closures of that emergency room, Mr. Speaker. I spoke many times in this House about some of the good initiatives that we see down in Digby and in that area of the province. It's unfortunate today that we've seen some of the issues around nurse practitioners on Long and Briar Island, Mr. Speaker, who worked extremely hard to provide services in that area that is underserviced by physicians, Mr. Speaker. And we're committed. We're committed as a government. I know the Minister of Health is committed, Mr. Speaker, to ensuring that healthcare providers like nurse practitioners are utilized in our province, Mr. Speaker, are utilized in a collaborative approach to healthcare, because that's the key, Mr. Speaker. We know that we don't have enough physicians to staff every emergency room in this province right now, Mr. Speaker. We have a high percentage of physicians to our province, but unfortunately they kind of congregate closer to the metropolitan area like Halifax. There's a distribution problem, Mr. Speaker, and the Minister knows that, and our government knows that. And we're going to work hard and extremely hard, Mr. Speaker, to try to encourage those physicians to take up their practice in those underserviced areas, Mr. Speaker, in rural communities, so that Nova Scotians can gain access to the much-needed care they need, Mr. Speaker, in their own communities. To stabilize physician coverage in rural Nova Scotia, Mr. Speaker, and to better meet the emergency department needs of communities, we're giving district health authorities more freedom to tailor services and doctors' compensation to their unique situation, Mr. Speaker. And we're allowing them to do that so that they know that if it's an issue to a particular area, that they have the ability, Mr. Speaker, that their hands aren't tied to address the issue if the issue is compensation, or if the issue is recruitment and the needed funds to go along with that, Mr. Speaker, because ultimately we need to be competitive here in Nova Scotia, especially around healthcare providers, Mr. Speaker, and their compensation and how much they get paid, Mr. Speaker, because we all know how many of our healthcare providers have left our province, and other jurisdictions around the country are knocking on their doors, Mr. Speaker, on a daily basis to try to attract them to Nova Scotia, or to their parts of the province or country, Mr. Speaker. An effective, accessible healthcare system is important to Nova Scotians, and we know that access to care is crucial to families and their communities, Mr. Speaker. That's why I think the residents of this province responded so overwhelmingly to our commitments and the fact that we are, Mr. Speaker, going to make healthcare a priority here in Nova Scotia. And I know in the months, the days, and the months and the years ahead that Nova Scotians will thank us for finally putting healthcare delivery in a high regards and in a priority for this government, Mr. Speaker. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. The honourable member for Kings West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and pleased to rise in my place today and speak to Resolution number 168. And there is so much history, so much to say around ER closures that I decided to break my usual approach and to write out a few notes for today. Here is Nova Scotia's reality when it comes to emergency room closures. More than 4,000 hours of closures since June the 10th, the day this government took power. This equates to more than 166 days. That is a staggering amount, Mr. Speaker, on an issue that has been plaguing this province for some time. It's high time this government do stop blaming others, start governing. They were elected by the people of Nova Scotia to point to solutions, not point fingers. We know how important having emergency rooms open in the smaller communities and here in Metro, in fact, right across the province, how important it is for people's peace of mind. This is a sad statement, but for many communities, emergency rooms have become the first point of access to our healthcare system. They have become places where people in communities go to access primary care. The Annapolis Valley is a great example. We have 12,000 to 14,000 people without a family doctor. Our caucus has said this many times in this House, and we will continue to say it. Emergency rooms across this province no longer function as emergency rooms. They function as doctors' offices. That, Mr. Speaker, is a sad statement, but nonetheless true. This government will never solve the ER closure crisis simply by appointing Dr. John Ross and then hoping things will turn around in a year's time. If we have learned any lesson at all, money will not fix this problem. Just ask the people of Cumberland County if their pilot worked, where doctors were paid more to cover shifts at the North and South Cumberland facilities. Despite the pilot, emergency room closures continued. Emergency room closures started out in this province as sporadic, infrequent events. Now they're scheduled. They're scheduled in places where people expect 24/7 emergency service. People in communities can now routinely expect that every Tuesday, Thursday, and every other Friday, the emergency room will be closed. That may help the minister and the district health authorities out by making it easier to plan, but it's certainly not good when you are dealing with healthcare issues that know no bounds when it comes to schedules. Further complicating closures of emergency rooms is the fact that multiple hospitals and facilities in adjoining communities are facing closures on the same day. This has a cascading effect on our regional hospitals and puts tremendous pressure on them as well. I can speak to this cascading effect, drawing on experiences in my own community in the Annapolis Valley. On one occasion this summer, we had Soldiers Memorial ER closed, Eastern Kings Memorial Community Health Center closed, and in fact, a code at Valley Regional that sent people bypassing Valley Regional on to another facility. This current government, the NDP government, campaigned and promised from one end of this province to the other that they would keep emergency rooms open everywhere, all emergency rooms, 24 hours a day. That is a commitment Nova Scotians heard during the election. That is a commitment we will hold them to, just in case Dr. Ross has other ideas. All emergency rooms across this province will remain open and function 24/7 as emergency rooms. The one thing we've seen in this last little while that the government done is appoint a very learned person to our ER advisor. Now we have a single person. While he's out there studying, he's going to fill in and actually provide some emergency services in emergency rooms around the province. I hope it doesn't take him too many hours, because I'm sure he could become a one-man locum service. That's a little bit of what we're worried about, because we don't need a lot more studies, and we need more than one person being the locum registry for the province's ERs. What we really need is the plan that the NDP presumably had when they promised to keep emergency rooms open. What was the plan? Why hasn't it happened? And why haven't we heard anything more than the appointment of an advisor? One person alone is not going to make this change. We also are being told that we have to wait a full year for this person to study the problem before he comes back with solutions. During the election campaign, we campaigned on both a short-term and a long-term solution to the emergency room closure crisis. We looked at the locum list as a short-term solution. There are locum registries used for emergency rooms in Ontario. They create a list of doctors. They're not all emergency room specialists. Some of them are family doctors, but doctors who are qualified to go in and fill shifts at the emergency. You can put your name on that list if you've got some flexibility in your schedule and agree to serve in Northern Ontario, or sometimes it's right into hospitals in Toronto, to say, I'll take a weekend and do 3 shifts this weekend. We have doctors, Mr. Speaker, you'll be surprised to know this, from here in Nova Scotia on that registry, flying up to Ontario, serving 2 or 3 or 4 shifts on a weekend, and then coming back, and they're well paid to do that. It's worth their while to go there and spend that time. In fact, the registry and the communities they're going into make it very attractive for them. Nova Scotia doctors choosing to go to Ontario because the locum registry is available and they can put in for weekends or for shifts that they can do. Mr. Speaker, it's been tried and true somewhere else. But no, we don't want to try that here, apparently, even though we know it works. Even though we know we have a lot of doctors and they would love to do this. I think we're just not making use of the services and the people we have right in our own system. In the longer term, we made a commitment to provide tuition for 20 new students. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I do have to take my place.
Thank the honourable member. The honourable member for Hants West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honour to rise this evening and speak to this issue, a very important issue across Nova Scotia. And the honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid did have one thing 100% correct. I'll give him that. We've got one of the best. We've got a world-class first response ambulance system in this province with the best trained people you'll find anywhere in this country or anywhere in North America. We have the best you'll find anywhere out there working in the streets today. Mr. Speaker, there's also a lot of nurses, doctors, etc., all those people that work, the CCAs, the LPNs, the cleaners, for that matter, everybody that's working in each one of those facilities and hospitals, long-term care facilities, etc., who are the very best and doing everything they can to make the lives of Nova Scotians better each and every day in this province, Mr. Speaker. Now, we've heard an awful lot of talk over the years in this place about emergency rooms, the backups, the closures. I worked for a lot of years in the EHS, the emergency on the streets system, and as has the honourable member from Safford-Cobequid, and we both know this problem didn't start yesterday. It didn't start 5 years ago. It's been going on in this country for many, many, many years. Many years. And this is just, we've seen it. We've seen it in Ontario with large backups. It didn't happen over the course of a few months or a year. It happened over many years, many, many years, Mr. Speaker. Part of the problem, and it's great, Dr. John Ross, excellent, excellent physician. Should be in the emergency department working as a physician. Now we got him hired 2 days a week. If anybody can probably shed some light on this issue, it will be John Ross. Very intelligent, and I admit that wholeheartedly. I think that he has a lot to offer the people of Nova Scotia, but I don't see any short-term fixes by way of emergency room closures, unless they're willing to look outside the box, Mr. Speaker. And we've seen for quite a few years now, and it doesn't matter what hospital you go in, we've seen along the South Shore, we've seen the Valley, we've seen Cape Breton, we've seen the Northern Region, all experiencing closures. We've seen this summer notices go out that the Hants Community Hospital, Mr. Speaker, that's in my area, could potentially close. Do you know why it didn't, Mr. Speaker? I'll tell you why it didn't. We've got doctors down there who are not young doctors. Catherine Smith told me, she said, that hospital won't close. I don't care if it's my last breath. I'll be in that emergency department and I'll work night shifts and I'll work day shifts. She's not alone. There are other committed doctors like that who will keep that facility going. And the people of Hants West, Hants County for that matter, the Valley, and wherever they may come from, now coming from the city, going out there, getting procedures done, Mr. Speaker, are very appreciative, I know they are, that those doctors are there. We're lucky out there. We're only less than an hour away from downtown Halifax. Those new young doctors can go out there and experience what that rural, little bit of rural atmosphere is like. It's not a money issue. We can talk all you want about money, dollars and cents, and sometimes there's just not enough money that you could offer a doctor to go to places in rural Nova Scotia. And you can't discredit them for that. They're young, some of these guys and gals right out of school. They want to be in the bigger urban centres with all the toys to play with, the learning, the technology, everything that's available to them. The honourable member from Digby-Annapolis had to come to Halifax, as he said earlier in this House today, to have his issue resolved. Thankfully, he could get that done. And looks mighty good, and we're very glad to have him back in this House today. It's a pleasure to have him here. It really is. Because he speaks his mind. Mr. Speaker, we all know that he's not afraid to get on his feet and speak about a number of issues, and I thought he might speak to this one this evening, but maybe he's not quite up to it yet. But I know we'll hear a lot more from that member and others on this important issue, Mr. Speaker. Starting with late debate, is it? Excellent. And as I said, this is not a problem that started a couple of years ago. This has gone on for a long time. Do we need to look at places like the Cobequid Emergency Centre being 24 hours to help take some of that load off? Yes, we do. And I heard the Minister of Health today in this House mention the fact that they're considering, or at least they're looking at, reviewing, thank you, Mr. Speaker, looking at potentially opening that facility. And I remember when they were in their first facility down on Memory Lane, a great facility with great staff, pushed to the limits. Every night at 10 o'clock and before, trying to ship people out. I was in there helping move them out. I know what it was like. But still, there was no place in those days, and that was early on in the 90s. No place to go then. Bids were an issue. And I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, one of the problems is we've got people waiting, taking up bids in hospitals, in emergency rooms, in hallways, wherever, in closets, wherever you can put them, Mr. Speaker, because there's no bids in the broader hospital system. Well, there could be. What's taking up the bids in some of the other areas are people waiting to get into long-term care facilities. We have something in this province called a single entry system. Access point doesn't work. Never has worked. You can talk to the doctors out in rural Nova Scotia. You can talk to them in Windsor. At the hospital there, we have Unit 500 there, and that's basically getting great care. It might as well be a long-term care nursing home facility because it's constantly full, Mr. Speaker, with patients that are waiting to go to a nursing facility. Why can't they get there? There's bids available. And we're going to talk about that on another day. I know my time's running short, but we're going to talk more about that. That issue is going to help resolve. And the minister and the government need to listen, and they need to review that issue as well, because you have to start moving some of them people out of those areas and getting them into bids that are available. And we know days and weeks and even months go by where there's a bed available in those long-term care facilities that are not being used. That's the first point. If we can get those people and their families where they need to be, Mr. Speaker, that's the first point of resolving this issue. And again, I know time is drawing near, and I'll say thank you very much for the time tonight to speak to that issue, and I look forward to coming back to speak a lot more, and I'm sure a lot of members are, on the issue of ER closures in this province.
Thank you. We have now arrived at the moment of interruption. The adjournment for debate has been chosen as announced earlier. Yes, okay. I'll revert back to the Deputy Government House business for a business and hours for tomorrow.
Thank you. I ask that the House now do rise to meet again. With daily routine and order. I now ask that the House rise till tomorrow at 2 to 10 to meet between the hours of 2 to 10 with daily routine, orders of the day, also to resolve yourself into the Committee of the Whole on supply, and if time permits, public bills for second reading, continuing with Bill 1, 2, 4, and 5.
Thank you. We've arrived at the moment of interruption. The adjournment for debate has been chosen as an announcement earlier and won by the honourable member from Guysborough, Sheet Harbour. Therefore, be it resolved that the House of Assembly congratulate the organisers of the 12th Annual Agricultural Harvest Festival recently held in Sheet Harbour and recognize the value of agriculture industry to some coastal communities in Nova Scotia. The honourable member for Guysborough, Sheet Harbour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It gives me great pleasure this evening to talk about the aquaculture industry in Nova Scotia, and in particular to talk about the